So my name is Amy Andrews, a business resourcing partner here at JGP. I've been a recruiter for 16, 17 years, like I said, and I really want to be able to help you find the best interview technique for you to be able to progress your careers in any interviews that you do within any industry. So the first step is congratulations, you've been selected for an interview. That's sometimes the hardest part, and I'm sure you will all experience many rejections across the way for interviews and not being successful for interviews. So you're halfway there. If you've got that interview request, then you're halfway there at securing that dream position. So let's think about before the interview. So it's really important that you do have a good look at the job description. There may be things in there that you can do standing on your head, you've got no problems at all, but there may be things in there that you might not be as comfortable with or have not had exposure to. So in terms of that, it means you can prepare better by knowing what's in that job description. Research the company, the products, the culture, and LinkedIn. All businesses, when you're applying for jobs, want to know that you're engaged with that business. It could be the case that they are a charity that you want to work for, or local authority that's close to home. So research them, have a look at their company pages on the internet, have a look if it's a product-based organisation that you've interviewed, have a little look at the products that they're offering, and also their social media pages for things like LinkedIn, and also their promises for social value, their Instagram page, their Facebook pages. Have a little look and just familiarize yourself with that business so that you could have actually a talking point with that manager or panel that you're going to be interviewing later. Also look over your CV and covering letter. It amazes me that how many people don't do that. It's really important to actually remind yourself what you put in your covering letter, what made you stand out within your application form, your covering letter, or your CV. It could be something that you've wrote about within some social value you've done, some charity work. It could be something to do with your past experience, or if you haven't got many years of experience, it could be something that you've done within education or in sixth form. I know my nephew's currently doing work experience at the moment, so he's probably going to add that to his CV. So it's really important that you do look over your covering letter and your achievements. And also create a list of your achievements. It's really important that you sell yourself, and you are the best person to be the #1 advocate for your job and your career. So it's really important that you do have a little list of achievements. Have you been best newcomer? Have you won an award for saving accounts some money within their rent arrears? It could be all sorts of things that you've done that you want to be proud of. And practice some interview questions, and I'm going to go on to that in a little while. And also mock interviews are really important, especially if you haven't gone through the process before. If you are working with an agency, they will want to help you find that and get that position. So reach out to them and say, can you do a mock interview with me? If you're nervous, ask a family or friend member, or come to me. I've helped quite a few people over LinkedIn in the past couple of weeks, just to give them some support and reassurance within the interview process. So interview questions. People tend to get very nervous when they're going for an interview, and believe me, I've been nervous and many times when I've interviewed for positions, but it's really important that you actually remember that the person interviewing you could be the first candidate that they've ever been interviewed. It could also be a new organisation. It could be a new post that they're interviewing for that they may not be as comfortable as interviewing techniques as maybe somebody who's more experienced. So it's really important to think that that person or persons who are interviewing you may also be a little bit nervous. So here are some top questions that normally get asked within an interview. So what made you want to apply for the role? So there must have been a reason why you wanted to apply for that position, whether it be something that they're doing in terms of research that they're doing. Is it because you live within the borough and you want to work for that particular council? Is it because you have had various years of experience within the private sector, you want to move to the public sector, or vice versa? So the reason why you apply for that job, because that interviewer wants to know how committed you are to that business, and how much you can give to that organization. So be honest, give them a really good understanding of what drew you to the position and want to apply. It could be the things that, so for example, many people want to work for a charity. Lots of candidates want to work within local authorities and public sector organizations, and it's because they give things back. So it's really important that you share the reason why. Now, a question which normally stumps people is where you see yourself in 5 years' time. And if you ask me that question, I probably wouldn't be able to give you a full answer. But what that interviewer wants to know is, are you going to have a longevity within that organization? Are you going to be the next team manager? Are you going to be a director within that business? It's about your aspirations and that you want to really aspire to be within that business for long term. If you're unsure and don't know where you want to be, then just say, look, my future aspirations, I don't know, we're in here in the present. However, I'd like to see myself in this particular role in 5 years' time. And it shows the business that you're going to be wanted and you're going to stay within that organization for a long time, because they want to ensure that they've got good people like yourselves in their business, and make sure that you do stick around for the long haul. What are you most proud of is another question. It could be something that you've done at work. It could be something to do with family. Candidates come back to me who have been on maternity leave and said, obviously the most proud thing I've done is my children. Say that. A lot of businesses now want people who are experienced in all sorts of areas, whether it be work related or a private reason of something like passing your driving test. If you're 17, 18 and this is your first job, that could be getting really good A-level results, going to university, or doing something like passing your driving test. So it could be anything. If it's specific to a role, then obviously think of examples that you're proud of within things like saving money, running social value events for organizations. It could be the case you run a team building event. Could be anything. So something that you're really proud of, and make sure that you give an example of what that is and what the situation was within that part of it. And also what motivates you. Anybody who's looking in sales will normally tend to say that they are money motivated. And that's obviously a good sales aspect for sales candidates. But obviously, if you are in the charity industry, local authorities, care industry, motivating you is helping people. If I ask my husband what motivates him as a nurse within the NHS, it's all about helping people, getting people back on their feet, trying to diagnose what's wrong and trying to solve their issues and trying to get them back to their greatest health. So anything that motivates you, make sure that you are fully committed to what you're saying, because anything that you wrote on your CV about motivations or skills or hobbies will come back to you in terms of an interview question. Within the current sort of stressful situations and pressures, we all do want to have a really good work-life balance, but obviously there is pressures comes with working in any industry, in any sector. So it's how you deal with a pressure or a stressful situation. So it could be the case of taking time out. It could be that you like to prioritize to do work if you know you've got multiple projects all in one go. How you deal with pressure is quite an important situation. So give ideas and say, well, actually, I'm quite a unstressful person. However, I like to prioritize. I like to make sure that I've got a tick sheet of everything that I want to achieve that week, and so I can tick it off. Other candidates or other examples could be you like to ensure that you have a full lunch break, you take breaks to prevent stressful situations. Obviously, if you're going to be on call in a caring environment, that could be a little bit different. But it's how you deal with stressful situations, and give an example of a time where you've done that before, and explain what the situation was that. And that leads me on to a difficult work situation. So we all love to work, and we all have difficult situations that we deal with in our work lives. And it's really important that you can tell a time of dealing with a difficult situation. It could be a difficult client, it could be a difficult customer, it could be someone that you've tried to help and they didn't want your help. It's thinking about things of what the situation is, how you dealt with that situation, and the outcome of that situation. So we're going to go on to a technique shortly called the STAR technique, which gives you a little bit more examples of how to break down these interview questions. So how you dealt with a difficult situation, it could be work related, it could be a personal situation. If you wanted to share a personal situation with an organisation, you don't have to, you can stick it within work. It depends on the interview that you're going to be going to. And also, when you're balancing multiple projects, how do you keep yourself organised? So like I've said, tick sheets. I'm very much a ticky person. I tick things off my sheets. Obviously, I had a few technical issues this morning, but I think it's the heat, but hopefully we're on a roll. So how you keep yourself organised? Is it the case that you prioritize certain things first? Is it the case that you don't take on additional workload? It's how you deal with projects, because an organisation, whenever your job you're in, is all about ensuring that you have so many avenues within your business and making sure that you can really take a hold of what you're doing and make sure that you're really thorough in your job. So I mentioned briefly there the STAR technique, when I'm sure many of you have heard what this is. So this stands for situation, task, action, and result. In competency-based interviews, organisations and interviewers want to make sure that you are thorough, rather than just giving a one-word answer to a question. They want to know the situation. So what happened? So for example, I had to deal with a difficult customer. They came into the shop and they weren't happy with something that they bought. The task, so what you did to address that. So you listened, and what needed to be done within that certain issue. So the challenges and deadlines and issues, and the action that you took. So for example, you listened to the customer, you listened to their complaint, you found out what the situation was with that particular product. You took ownership and decided to give them a refund. And then obviously the result is that person got their refund, they turned away really happy, and there was a result there. So that situation, task, action, and result, that STAR technique can be added to every single interview question. So when I'm saying to you about thinking about interview questions beforehand, if you have a STAR technique for each of those questions, you will remember, and you'll be able to say, this is the situation, this is the task, the action that I had to do, and the result that we got. And hopefully it was a positive result. If it wasn't a positive result and you've learned something from that outcome, then share that. Don't be afraid to say, actually, it's not the result that I wanted. However, I've learned from a situation because this gave me further knowledge. I've done some professional development that's enabled me to have more skills and training. It led to GDPR training. It led to anything else. So it's really important that you do really share what that result is, positive and negative. So things to ask. So there's lots of different things that you want to make sure that you're prepared for. And some people have said that if you don't prepare, then obviously you failed. Obviously, I had a few hiccups this morning, so I do apologise for that. So things to ask before you go to the interview. So you want to know the interview format. You want to know, is it in person? Is it over the phone? Is it virtual? Is it part of an assessment day? So assessment days, for those who may not be aware, is sometimes in some certain industries, if you're recruiting multiple roles, they do an assessment day where they put you into different tasks, and it just gives you an overall feel of what the business is like, and they can see you in a real life environment. So always double check what the interview is going to be: telephone, virtual, assessment. Also ask them if you know how many stages there are. Is it just an interview where it's just yourself and one manager? Is it going to be a panel interview? Is there going to be more than one person on the panel? Is it going to be HR involved? So these are the things that you can be prepared for. And it means that if you are interviewing with somebody, you can have a little look at the LinkedIn profile if they've got one, and find out a little bit more about them, because you may have shared interests and common ground. And ask if there's anything that you need to prepare. For example, in some creative industries, if you're in marketing and communications, they might ask to see some examples of your work that you've done, so take your portfolio with you. Or in some interviews that you're asked to prepare a presentation, which means that you have time to prepare in advance. So always do ask the questions, because if you don't know, you'll never know. So please do ask those questions and ensure that you are fully briefed. And like I said before, if you are working with an agency and they've got you an interview through themselves, then please do ask your agency, because they are the ones who will be able to give you as much information as they can. So yeah, so be really prepared, and I'm sure the interview will go well. So questions to ask. Now, a major stumbling block, which as I found as a manager who's interviewed to hire people within my business, there's lots of questions that we can be asked. So the interview is not only for you to prove yourself to an employer, it's also about how they stand out to different businesses that you're interviewing with. And you want to make sure that you've got some rapport with that interviewer or panel, because that's an environment that you hope to stay in for a long period of time. So it's really, really important that you do think of some good questions to ask, because they want to be interviewed as well. So don't go in and say, no, I don't have any interviews to ask. They want to be interviewed. They want to know that you're really keen about starting this business and about being part of their team. So some examples of some questions to ask. So there are lots of questions here. I don't want to bore you to death by going through every single one, and we will send through the presentation after the webinar. But just things to ask a manager. So why do they work here, and how have you grown the business? I know if people came to interview me, they would wonder what makes me work for Jobs Go Public, JGP, and I say, the reason why I joined the business is because they're a fantastic bunch of people, and I've really enjoyed my tenure here. And it's about the people that you work with, and having a really good environment to work in makes your job and makes your day go so well. So ask that question to them, because you want to get a feel for the team, and you want to get an understanding of what has happened within that business. And also, we have gone through a pandemic. So how has that affected the team? Have they gone from working in an office environment to now being solely remote? What's the hybrid working arrangement? Is there any change for that within the hybrid working arrangement? Because what you don't want to do is sign a contract on a job that's 2 days a week from home, and then you learn that the business is going to be working 5 days. So they're the sort of questions that you want to be asking to get the most out of the interview. And things like I've said, the long-term plans on hybrid and remote working schedules are really important, especially with a work-life balance. People aren't doing the commute as they used to within businesses. So it's really important that you are asking those questions, because you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And things about onboarding. So if you're successful, and fingers crossed that you want to know what the next process is. So how is their onboarding? What do they do to make you feel a valued employee within their business? What documents would you need to provide? What information would you need to have? One of the things that you may need to take to you in an interview could be right to work or references. So make sure you do ask for those as well as part of the process. And if you're going to be managed, ask the interviewer what their management style is like, and what type of employee works for them. We don't always get on with people that we work with. We don't know until we get there. It's really important that you do ask what their management style is. Do they offer full training? What's the training program, especially if you're new to this industry or this organization? What training are you going to be provided? Because it means that they're giving you some form of level of engagement to actually go out and get that interview. And also, what does excellence look like? A really good question, which I've been asked before, is what does excellent performance look like to me? So if I was hiring somebody within my team, it's someone who listens, someone who is quite creative, and who comes out with some ideas. So they're things that you want to be able to have a conversation about. And when I look at candidate interview questions, if you're asking good questions, it starts good communication. And you'll probably find within this process of asking the interviewer questions, you will get lots more engagement with that person, because you'll be building rapport. You'll have already spent maybe 20 minutes with them, half an hour, and it's about building on your rapport and your relationship. And things like team goals. If you're going to be working a part of a team, ask what the team's like. What's the team dynamic? What's the culture like within that business? And also things that are missing. Are they missing and looking for someone to be really proactive? Are they looking for someone to be really organised within that business? They're sort of things that the manager will be able to tell you. And like I said, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And something silly like a team tradition. I know for my team, we have little awards within our business, so that we have people who do really well. We have sports events, those sort of things. So favourite team traditions like a lunch on a Friday could be anything that you could think of. So like I said, it builds rapport and it really gets engagement from them into you, because you're asking really sensible questions, and that as a manager who's interviewed candidates along the way, it's something that we really like to see, that actually we're sort of interviewed for them as well. So that's a really good thing to do. And a lot of candidates, like I say, do go out of the interview and don't ask any questions, and I think it's a really missed opportunity that you do ask really good questions, so that you can show how much you're interested within that business, and especially if you haven't got much experience within their industry, or you're just starting out fresh from uni, or doing an apprenticeship or anything like that straight after out of school. It really shows that you're keen and able to really go forward and think of good questions to ask. And finally, some other things to note, which I think are really, really important in this modern age, is dress to impress. Someone once told me to dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. And it's really important that you are smart. And if it is a very corporate environment, then do dress accordingly. Managers can be put off with relaxed dress codes if it's too much, and we have had that feedback before from clients. So dress to impress, and make sure that you are smart for the relevant interview. Arrive on time or early. There is nothing worse than getting to an interview all flustered. It's hot outside like today, of today's. If you had to go on the tube, you want to make sure that you are there at least 10 minutes early, and do set up 10 minutes early as well to make sure that you are on time. I'd rather candidates wait, have a glass of water just to calm their nerves, than be late and flustered for an interview. If you are going to be late for something where there's maybe tube strikes or something happened, then please do give them a call, give them a ring, and just do advise them that you're going to be late. They'd rather to know that there's an issue on a tube or a bus or whatever reason, than not hearing anything and then just turning up 10-15 minutes late. Take a notepad and pen. They will be writing notes down on you, so please feel free to take a notepad and pen, write down anything that you are unsure about, and so that when you get to the questions at the end, you can ask a clarification question. Be personable to everybody that you meet, whether it be a receptionist, whether it be somebody who is on the front desk, on the security. It could be anybody. Be really nice, because people do talk and people do interlink. So please do be nice to everybody that you meet, and don't panic. An interview, it can be a very stressful process, and it is hard to rush things, to be really panicky, because it is panicky meeting somebody for the first time that you've never met before. So don't panic, and just be relaxed as much as you can, and do ask them about the next step. So is there going to be a second stage interview? If you have had a telephone interview, is there going to be a face-to-face interview? If you've had a virtual meeting, will you then be expected to go into the office to meet the team? So you want to ask them about their next steps and where they go from here. And also thank them from their time. It's so nice to be thanked for an interview, and they will thank you for coming. So you've taken an hour, half an hour out of your day. You could have done it on your lunch break. It could have been something that you've had to miss, something coming out of work. So thank them for their time, and they will, I'm sure, will thank you for their time. And finally, good luck. Interview, like anything, is practice. It's like riding a bike. You've just got to get back on that bike and try again. So it's really important that you do keep practicing. And if you are disheartened from an interview, then please do ask for feedback. Managers probably interview 2 or 3 candidates for each job, and they've probably shortlisted from many to get that interview. So do ask them for your feedback. And like I said, if you are working with an agency, ask the agency, ask your consultant at that business, because they should be able to ask for feedback for you on your behalf. and don't be scared of negative feedback, because negative feedback sometimes can be really beneficial to you, and it can be really important to take that on board and learn for the future. Not every interview goes well, not every interview goes swimmingly, but it's really important that you take on board feedback. And obviously, if there's feedback that you want to give to that organisation, then feel free to do so as well. And you can do that through your consultant if you want to. But yes, so good luck for the interviews. Also, any questions, if anybody's got any questions, then please do put them in the chat function. I see I have some interviews. So strength-based, so I've just had a question here, say, have you got any tips on strength-based questions? I'm not too sure what you mean about strength-based questions. Do you mean something about how you've done before? I'm not quite sure on that, what you're meaning about strength-based. I know there's lots of different types of interview techniques that people use. If you can maybe shed a little bit more light on that, and put that in the question box, that would be great. If not, I will research that for you and put some interview questions that have been answered in the interview technique. What I would be really thorough about in any interview is being really thorough, and about showing that you are thorough in your answers. So if you are asked about a particular task or situation, that you do go through the STAR technique with strengths and weaknesses. I've had another question here. What if you do not have experience? How can one use other skills or areas of work to get the job or impress in interviews? That's a really good question. Thank you very much for sharing that, Jane. It can be really daunting, but if you have been offered an interview, there is something that a manager has seen for you to be shortlisted enough for you to interview. So go back on your application form, go back onto your CV and look at what you've done, and look about things like what I mentioned earlier on today about accomplishments and achievements. Have a look at your achievements of things that you've accomplished through your time. It can be really daunting. I mean, my nephew had to interview for sixth form and he has no work experience. And it's about the things that he's learned along the way. So he learned things about his business technique. He'd learned things from art. So it could be things that you've done outside of work, being part of a team, part of a netball team, part of a sports team, about working together. It could be how you interact with other people, how you work well on your own and in a team environment. There could be loads of different things that you've done in your career, but just think of answers to some questions and you can impress them that way. And also by impressing somebody, you can ask them lots of questions about the business and be honest and say, look, if there's something that you haven't done that part of the business. However, you have done this, which is similar. So hopefully that's answered your question, Jane. And don't be scared to research and have a little look at different organizations and see what their culture is like and what their business, because there'll be things that you will have in common ground. So another question here is about how to answer strengths and weaknesses question. So again, so you want to, it's a difficult question because obviously no one wants to share their weaknesses, which I can imagine nobody wants to do. You've got to really turn your strengths and your weaknesses especially into positives. For example, one of my weaknesses is that I sometimes overpromise, and I say that I will do a lot of things and I don't always get everything done. However, that is because I want to try and please as many people as I can to get things done for them. So really say that you like to take things on board. However, you have realized that one of your weaknesses is that you say yes to too much and that you're actually trying to prioritize your own workload to make sure that you are achieving what you need to be achieving in your work life. Other weaknesses, things like time management. You've learned you're always late for friends, but you're never late for work. Those sort of weaknesses it's the reason why they want to see that question is because they want to see how you can develop and how you realize what your weaknesses are and what you're doing to overcome them. So hopefully it's not being late for work. Hopefully it's something like taking too much on or not be able to tick things off your list as much as you can. And in regards to strengths, you should really praise your strengths. Your strengths of what you've got you in that interview in the first place. You've done a really good covering letter. You've done a really good application form. So really focus on the strengths that you've done. And do think of a weakness. We all have them. I know we all think we're perfect. I mean, I I like to think that I was really organised and getting myself sorted. But obviously that's one of my weaknesses, that I need to make sure and be doubly sure what I'm actually doing. Hopefully that's answered your question there for you, Tosin. If we have weaknesses in covering letter, then how do we improve it? So tips for improvement. If we have weaknesses in covering letter, then how can we improve it? In terms of your covering letter, you have to really use, like I said, with your weaknesses, is how you've improved on your weaknesses. It's about identifying what they are and how you have changed your perspective or your experience. So if there have been weaknesses in your cover letter, or if it actually you're meaning your weaknesses in cover letter, so reread your covering letter many times and make sure that your covering letter actually is specific to that job description. So look at what they're looking for, look at their desirables and what their essential criteria are, and make sure that you're giving examples in your covering letter of what you've done before. For example, if I was interviewing for a HR job and I didn't have a CIPD qualification, it could be the case that I was applying to do that CIPD. So it could be anything that if you don't meet that criteria, give them a reason why you know that you don't meet that criteria, and share that knowledge with you. So hopefully that's answered some questions for you as well. I've got another question here. I'll do a couple more questions, and then what I will do is I'll collate all the answers for you. So I've been in the same organisation for a long time. What would be considered as something negative by a potential employer, as I can't show career progression? So I have done that. I was in a business for 16 years and I had a long tenure in a business, and I decided to move out of that organisation. In my eyes, it is a really strong thing to have. If you've done a number of years within an organisation, it shows that you're committed. It shows that you really want to do well for that organisation. There's obviously reasons why you want to move on. However, if you have got career progression within that business, that is because you wanted to work for that business, you wanted to develop, and now that you see yourself moving on. So I don't think that's always a negative. On the flip side, some managers who are interviewing think that if a candidate moves around 2 or 3 times a year, that is also a negative experience, and you have to turn that weakness into a positive. But I think actually, if you have been somewhere for a long time, it does show that you've got commitment, you've got really good skills, and you actually want to work for a really good business. And there's obviously a reason there why you want to move. So don't be put off by applying for jobs if you want to move on and see what the world's like out of that business. And believe me, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and actually it was probably the best move for me because it enabled me to widen my horizons. So don't be disheartened if that's your feedback, because do say to an employer, well, actually it shows how committed I am to work for an organisation for such a long time, because in some industries that doesn't happen at all. So I'll do one more question, because obviously I'm aware that this is probably your lunch times. Yeah, and then what I will do is I'll collate some answers for you. So I've got one question here. I've got an interview in a team where I worked directly for the director previously. How can I highlight my experience in the team without seeming like I'm boasting or using it like a crutch? Now, what I would say is, if you have interviewed for someone before, or if you're interviewing for somebody who you know and worked in a team that you worked with before, then pretend that you do not know that person. Some of the feedback that I've had from candidates and clients in the past, that is somebody who's interviewed for example, the team they're in to be made a permanent employee, or they have moved from one department into another, is that they seem too familiar. You have to interview in that interview like you don't know them, that they don't know anything about you. I know that can be quite difficult to do, but it is really important that you do think about something about that you've not met them before, and that's something you're new to the business, so that you're not boasting or you're not using it as a crutch, that you're actually doing there because you want to do that interview. And it's not about boasting because you know how to do that job or worked in that team previously. It's about pretending that they don't know that. And I would say that was probably one of the biggest things that I would know from interviewing candidates before and have candidates come to me and have feedback, is because they seemed too familiar. They didn't give us enough experience as another candidate who were unknown to the organisation. So pretend that you don't know them, and then it won't seem like you're boasting within that interview. So I'm going to leave it there for there, because I feel like we've got some good questions. I will put together a Q&A and I'll send that out to everybody who's attended today. Again, I can't apologise enough for having the wrong presentation up. That's something that I need to work on my weaknesses to make sure I'm 100% prepared. I think it's the heat has sent me in a frenzy. But thank you so much for attending today. Please do reach out to me if you ever need assistance, because I do want to be able to help and give you as much information as I can. You will get a copy of the recording, and also there will be the question and answers sent out to you. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you do get very good feedback from your interviews, and I hope you get that dream job. So good luck, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.